January 31st, 2024. Live streaming from a distant galaxy, this is the world's most controversial podcast, the Doomsy McDoomscroller Show, a philosophical science fiction series featuring realistic futurology and refreshingly heretical commentary on the news. And the news today, as Doomsy's gonna try to make happen every episode, the news today supports the point, the title. And that is the assertion, or maybe the fact, observation, that your culture has an economic system that's based on warmongering. And I don't just mean like war versus each other. That's really obvious, right? I mean, that there's that going on. I mean, it's constantly. It's just amazing how somehow the mythology of your culture has got you thinking that, civilized has even anything slightly to do with nonviolence or friendliness or being neighborly or polite. Why are those connotations? It's amazing, really. I mean, y'all have wars versus each other. Yeah, y'all have wars so huge. They encompass the whole globe. You name your wars after the world, and you have to serialize them. So, warmongering, you got to be open to this assertion, this truth. And it's not just, it's not a modern thing. History has plenty to say. Historians. And that's just a fact. Warmongering is baked into your cake, and it's baked into the cake of your culture. And I want to show you that I don't just mean like wars versus each other. Like, here's an example. Here's two examples. I'll bring up this article. This was from a few weeks ago, it seems, from January 11th. 2024. Found this, like a lot of stuff I've found on the Yahoo Newswire. This is from The Guardian, and the headline reads, more than 100 wild animals trapped by border wall killed in Texas wildfire. 100 wild animals trapped by border wall, killed in Texas wildfire. So, you get it? Doomsy's talking about the war versus Earth that y'all wage. Now, here's the good news, and here's the really good news. And you gotta include this with every detail, with any article, with any story, about the collapse. And Doomsy's pretty sure he always includes it in his shows, in his show, and in the episodes, just about every episode. You got to include this with the news of the collapse. Is that the good news? The good news is that your culture is doing this, that's good news. I mean, that's really, really good news. And it might be hard for you to accept because the mythology of civilized culture wants you to think that the problem with the earth right now is Homo sapiens, that it's your species that's doing this, that the problem is somehow coded in your DNA. And that biologically, what choice do you have? You claim to have this free will, I suppose. This headline, more than 100 wild animals trapped by border wall, killed in Texas wildfire. This is your war versus Earth. Okay, that's your culture's war versus Earth. And that's good news, because as human beings, you don't have to kill every effing thing on the planet that gets in your way. That interferes with your crops. You don't have to do that. That's not a requirement of being a human being. Here's more evidence of the fact that your economy is based on warmongering. And that's why all the economists, all the BS that they're talking about, like for future investments, any forecasting they have for, it goes beyond a year, I would guess, but they're trying to go a decade or something. No way. They don't take into account the warmongering. Here's the other article. This is from ewg.org. It's from 2005. EWG. What is EWG? Oh, the Environmental Working Group. That's what EWG stands for. And it seems like the image on this webpage looks like unborn twins, humans in the womb. And the title of this article is Body Burden: The Pollution in Newborns. The pollution in newborns. A benchmark investigation of industrial chemicals, pollutants, and pesticides in umbilical cord blood. Summary. This is the article here, not Doomsy. This is the article. It's written, summary. In the month leading up to a baby's birth, the umbilical cord pulses with the equivalent of at least 300 quarts of blood each day, pumped back and forth from the nutrient and oxygen-rich placenta to the rapidly growing child cradled in a sack of amniotic fluid. This cord is a lifeline between mother and baby, bearing nutrients that sustain life and propel growth. All right, on that note, let Doomsy remind everybody of who the actual creator is. The creator of every human being is a woman. You got that? All right? I know it's probably not all right. But that's the truth. Nobody is ever a vessel. And there's no such thing as a divine message. Never has been, never will be. Divine messengers do not exist. All right. Back to the article. We're talking about lifeline between mother and baby. Not long ago, scientists thought that the placenta shielded cord blood in the developing baby from most chemicals and pollutants in the environment. But now we know that at this critical time, when organs, vessels, membranes, and systems are knit together from single cells to finish form in a span of weeks, the umbilical cord carries not only the building blocks of life, but also a steady stream of industrial chemicals, pollutants, and pesticides that cross the placenta as readily as residues from cigarettes and alcohol. This is the human, quote, body burden, unquote. The pollution in people that permeates everyone in the world, including babies in the womb. So there's your evidence. War versus Earth. All right, so that's good news. And here's why that's good news. Because you don't really have to wage a war versus a planet. It's kind of ridiculous, really. Y'all can stop doing that. Right? That's good news. That's good news. Look, it's probably not good news for the neo-pharaohs. The neo-pharaohs, you know, I'm talking like the top million wealthiest people. It doesn't matter how you prop them up, right? They're pharaohs either way in any economic system. Doesn't matter what you call it, communism, socialism, capitalism. So it's all basically the same system, right? Where you just filter through society, find the most greedy, the most ruthless, most power-hungry people among you, and you reward them for ruthlessness. Right, that's what y'all do. You're doing that while, and maybe because, you're waging war versus Earth. Doomsday posits that to have so many neo-pharaohs, to have so much royalty, that you have to wage war versus Earth to do that. Because look, you see it in the news. Right? Any finance show or business, I mean, it's about growth. More people. There were 4 billion people a half century ago. Half century before that, 2 billion. So from 2 billion to 4 billion to 8 billion in a century. Now, yeah, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of living, breathing, sleeping, crapping animals, all the more creatures on Earth, right? But that's also all that life that represents a lot of death. It represents a lot of death because here's another fact. The life of every organism arises from the death of other organisms. That's just how it is in the universe. Even in this universe. So, and all the other universes I've been to. So I would say that's just how it is in the multiverse. The life of every organism arises from the death of other organisms. So you're going from 2 billion to 4 billion, 8 billion. That represents war. You've effed up everything so badly that there's just chemicals everywhere, even in your newborns. Pollutants. Okay, here's the good news. Your culture is to blame. Not humanity. You don't have to rewrite the DNA of 8-9 billion people. You don't have to, I don't know, go back in time, do something to change the evolution, the biology. You don't have to do that. That'd be pretty tough, wouldn't it? Kind of impossible, really. So you don't have to do that. I'm wearing a spacesuit. I want to get back to Earth. It's the only atmosphere I can breathe. And y'all can probably make sure that by the time Doomsday gets back, that atmosphere is still breathable by humans and other large mammals. Because your culture's to blame for this. It's not a humanity thing. A culture can be abandoned. You can't stop being a member of your species. Doomsday, I'm Homo sapien forever. Doesn't matter how far I am from the Milky Way galaxy. I'm not civilized anymore. Of course, I had to leave the frickin' planet to get away from the dominant culture. Man, the pyramid building sucks, doesn't it? So, there's evidence of the war. Wild animals trapped by the border wall, killed in a wildfire, trapped by a freaking border wall. Border wall. For 300,000 years, there were people without border walls. And we have Doctors Without Borders, right? Well, for 300,000 years, it was people without borders. Any borders, anywhere. Doesn't mean you could just wander anywhere. Just there were consequences. But world wars? No. Weren't any world wars. Here's some more good news. Okay, let's look at this headline. This is from yesterday. Okay, I'll put this up on the visor. Of course, if you're listening to the podcast, I'll read this article, but it's off the Yahoo Newswire, I guess from Huffington Post. I've seen it in some other sources too. Joe Biden reveals what world leaders are telling him about Donald Trump. Right, okay, that's the headline. Now, of course, we all know what he's saying, or what he's hearing. That anybody can just play Donald Trump. He's an easy mark. And he confesses to it all the time. He admits to that. He praises, sucks up to these despots and these tyrants around the world. And then he just, you could just see how happy he is when he talks about like the Taliban or something, what called him Your Excellency or something like that, or Your Highness or whatever. He just freaking loves that. This dude is just weird. Serious issues. Look, but that's not what Doomsday's going to comment here. Okay, the headline was Joe Biden reveals what world leaders are telling him about Donald Trump. Well, I'll venture to guess the feeling behind their statements to Joe Biden, and that's holy F. Democracy may doom us all. But look, Joe Biden reveals what world leaders are telling him about Donald Trump. They're not leaders, all right? Okay, you got a stampede, like a multi-layered stampede. You just got people in a stampede, like just stacked layers. On the top of that stampede, people are on some really comfy furniture. Below them, there's people who are hoisting that furniture up. Kind of an uncomfortable spot. You got to hold the furniture aloft. But it could be worse for them because they're not running. They're on the shoulders of other people who are doing the running. Their feet are the ones hitting the ground. And that's the stampede. So you have this royalty, right? You got these pharaohs, these neo-pharaohs, every economic system. None of them will give you utopia. None. There's no utopia out there in any of that. So you got this layered stampede. The people on top, yeah, I guess you'd say they're powerful. I mean, they could throw some stuff down from their perch atop. They could do some damage. I mean, they're powerful. But are they leaders? They aren't leading that stampede. Nobody is leading the stampede that is civilized culture. Nobody's leading it. And getting out of the stampede requires no leaders. No leaders. The movement is already underway. It's already underway. And that's an abandonment of civilized culture. It will be revolutionary, but I hesitate to call it a revolution anymore. Because revolution, that word, usually you think of uprisings. And leaders of revolutions and uprisings and violence. But it will be revolutionary. It's not technically wrong to call it a revolution. There's other things like that aren't necessarily all about violence, that are called revolutions. Although there's an argument for saying something even like the Industrial Revolution was about violence. It wasn't about an uprising, though, was it? And it's not what's responsible for all the pollution and destruction. Not the Industrial Revolution. You got to go back to Agricultural Revolution. But look, the point is that the progenitors of civilized culture, they had an effed up worldview. It was totally effed up. Couldn't get a worse worldview, really. Couldn't get it more backwards. Couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more stupid, really. They were the leaders of the culture. They got it started. All the pyramid building, Well, they didn't start the pyramid building per se. They took them a couple thousand years to really revel in the ownership, the conquering of land, and the fruitful multiplication. Took a lot of, at the start, food surpluses weren't a thing. Just like world wars weren't a thing, food surpluses weren't a thing. Exponential population growth because of those food surpluses, that wasn't happening for 300,000 years, and then y'all started it, or your culture started it. The progenitors of your culture started. Maybe you could call them leaders. They started doing something new. They started waging war versus Earth. That started immediately. That's right from the get-go of your culture. That's what it's about. The subjugation of Earth, thereby the subjugation of women. Your culture is just maximum misogyny. Look, civilized culture has spread. It has spread across the globe by way of genocide and slavery. Everywhere it has gone. So it was never anything that was going to be able to continue. So it's coming to an end. So that's the good news. Doomsday wants to always include this good news with maybe, I know it's uncomfortable, but the news about the collapse. What's going on? So your economies can never fix anything. The deforestation is not going to stop until civilization does. This is war. You're at war versus Earth. That's what your economies do. This headline, this is from a couple years ago. Well, 4 years now. It's from the summer. I remember this, the pandemic summer. This article, this was originally in the journal Nature, perhaps the most prestigious scientific journal there is. Peer-reviewed. These physicists, they did the math. And it was checked and rechecked. 90% chance that human civilization may collapse within decades due to deforestation, claim physicists. Every single economy is going to collapse. Don't fear that, because your economies suck. They're terrible for people. They're good for neo-pharaohs, but for everybody else, your economies suck. Civilized economy sucks for people and for every other living thing on the planet. So it's gonna end whether you abandon it or not. So be open to it. More and more people are talking about it. Doomsday knows this because that's why I'm talking about it. There was 1 million people talking about this before Doomsday ever did. If you got questions, comments, criticisms, you want your voice heard on the show, let's go to Doomsday's website, www.doomsdaymcdoomscroller.com.